Michigan won in week one as expected, but dominant performance should be underlined here. Didn't just slop around and get by a MAC team, laid down the hammer. So the 16-point Vegas spread was eclipsed, doubled. Impressive performance on both sides of the ball for the Wolverines as they welcome Washington, of course, on Saturday night. We got Clayton Safey on the line from Rivals Platform for Michigan football, the Wolverine. Clayton, how we doing today?
Pretty good. College football back in full swing. It was a heck of an opening weekend, Mark, just watching these other games from around the country as much as I could. Obviously, it was a little bit busy on Saturday afternoon, but then finishing up the weekend with Notre Dame and Florida State last night I thought was awesome too.
Yeah, the week one matchups, phenomenal. The Big Ten really went at it too with Indiana, Iowa, Ohio State, Minnesota, and Wisconsin and Penn State with conference games. And Ohio State and Michigan kind of have their featured non-conference games here in week two. So the Huskies coming to town. We'll get to that in just a second. But let's start just with the overall assessment of this week one performance, because some people, the detractors, will say, played Western Michigan. But we've seen it in the past, not just from Michigan. You see it all over the country. High-level teams with big brands that are supposed to take care of business, slop around, maybe lose the game, maybe only win by 10 points. Michigan, once it went 7-7, they took off from there and never looked back.
Yeah, Washington's one of those teams that was supposed to, smack around Montana and FCS school. I'm sure we'll talk about that in just a second. But no, overall, I thought it was a really good performance. I thought Michigan would cover the spread. I had them by about 20 or 23, I think, in my pregame prediction. But it was tough to say coming in. I also said that I thought this could be a close game in the fourth quarter, depending on how things played out, because Western Michigan has enough talent. I thought Caleb Ellaby, their quarterback, is one of the top group of 5 quarterbacks in the country. Michigan's breaking in a new defense against a team that likes to throw. And talking to a Western Michigan writer before the game, asking, okay, what's the strength of Caleb Ellaby's game? He said decision-making. And I was thinking against a new look defense, trying to find its footing. That could be a little bit of a problem if they got going. But they tightened up, like you said. It was 7-7. But then I thought Michigan made some good adjustments, and it was a good first test for Mike McDonald in his first game as defensive coordinator. They went with, cover 2 basically the rest of the game, manned up a little more. I know that's, something that Don Brown did, but he didn't have the safeties over the top like Mike McDonald was able to employ. So I thought the adjustments were good. They stayed stout on the inside, despite, like Jim Harbaugh talked about today, sometimes there were only 5 guys in the box, but they were still able to stop the run for the most part. So I thought defensively it was good. And then the offense, it was just, exactly what they said they were going to do. They said they were going to run the ball more this season. That was an emphasis. They did that right out of the gate. There was some grumbling from the fans on some of those. They even ran it on 3rd down one time, got it to 4th and short, ended up picking up the 4th. But there was some grumbling because they didn't throw there for a little bit in the first quarter, but they wanted to establish the run. They used that to set other things up. Once they got Ronnie Bell, who I'm sure we'll talk about here as well. Unfortunate that he went down with a season-ending injury, but they got him in single coverage in the slot, hit a 76-yard touchdown pass to him. So everything kind of had a purpose, and I thought after last season when they were just kind of throwing stuff at the wall, that was a big sign for me coming in after some of the tweaks that Jim Harbaugh made in the offseason. So I thought it was as smooth as this opener could have gone, basically. You faced a little adversity early on the defensive side of things, saw how your first-time coordinator adjusted, still some things to clean up. I thought they could have been a little better against the run, but again, they were, not stacking the box by any means as well. So, it's going to be interesting, and we'll talk about it, but this Washington game, now that they come in 0-1 after what you would assume would have been a cupcake type of game for them, only able to put up 7 points. So, this Michigan team, I think, can't rest on their laurels, especially after last season. You go back, they beat Minnesota on the road, a ranked Minnesota team to open the year, and then they fall to Michigan State, who had just lost to Rutgers the year before. So there are so many parallels here, and I think a lot of these same guys that were on that Michigan team a year ago know exactly what situation they're in, and I don't expect them to necessarily, have a big letdown this week.
Yeah, I think we tend to overreact to the game one results, and of course they're meaningful. The teams went out there and played, so we have to evaluate what we played. But
yeah,
we tend to elevate certain teams, and probably more than that, we completely dismiss other teams that oh, they must be trash. They looked awful,
Right.
and so Washington's not. There's no ability there to contend with Michigan or anybody else. Okay, we've got plenty of examples from every year where teams are losing FCS teams, group of 5 teams, and then they come back and have a strong season. So not saying that's a good thing for Washington, and I'm not predicting them to like go to the playoffs or anything, but they're still capable, still a talented football team. But we'll get to the Huskies in a second. More so, the offense is going to grab the attention with the 47 points, all those explosive plays, 335 on the ground. But I'm going to go defense first because the Western Michigan defense was pretty deplorable last year. So Michigan took advantage of that. But the Western Michigan offense last year had the highest explosive play rate in the country, scored tons of points. And of course, Michigan gave up the big plays last year. But like you said, after that early touchdown to make it 7-7, they didn't score a meaningful touchdown after that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's something that I wrote on my Monday morning quarterback column this morning, was this Michigan offense made those explosive plays like you mentioned. They were one of 2 teams in college football, coincidentally joining Ohio State as teams that had plays from 60 yards or more from scrimmage. They had 3 from 50 yards or more, 4 from 40 yards or more. So the offense was making those big plays that we didn't see a year ago. But the defense under Mike McDonald, which is, I think going to be a little bit more willing to give up some underneath routes, maybe the flat, as long as they don't give up those big plays. And they didn't in this game against a capable offense, as you mentioned, with Caleb Ellaby at quarterback. So 5 plays only of 20 yards or of 10 yards or more. So I thought that was, a big positive for Michigan, being able to limit big plays for Western Michigan. Again, an offense that can make those. And they tightened up as the game went on. Aiden Hutchinson from that new outside linebacker edge spot, I thought really looked good. His moves were on point. And I wrote this after the game as well. He looked like a guy that hadn't been able to hit an opposing quarterback for a year, because that's exactly the case. He got hurt early last season, came out guns blazing. Dax Hill on the defensive side as well was playing a nickel spot. He was free safety all last season, but they went with the nickel basically the entire game, and he was all over the field, as Jim Harbaugh described it following the game, and I thought the same. So those are kind of your 2 cornerstones. The rest of the defense I thought was in position, which you couldn't always say last season, and they've still got some young guys that I think need to grow as the season goes on, but I think there's some potential there to at least be, they look like a competent group again. They looked better than that in this game, but again, it's Western Michigan. You want to see it against a better opponent, but I think there's a lot of things to build on.
So when you mentioned some of those younger guys, anyone in particular that hasn't seen much of the field previously that is happening to step into a role that showed us something?
Yeah, I would say Nikai Hill-Green stepping in as the starting inside linebacker next to Josh Ross, the captain. He took that role over early on in camp when everyone else was penciling in Michael Barrett to be the starting inside backer. No, it's the second year player, Nikai Hill-Green. I thought he did pretty well. They had him blitzing a couple times, and then they kind of, were able to find a cutback lane and things like that. So I don't think that was necessarily his fault each and every time, but he finished with 4 tackles. Another guy that flashed was Mike Morris, a third-year guy who was playing kind of a defensive end type of spot with his hand in the dirt inside where Aiden Hutchinson was playing. He didn't start, but he was able to come in, and I thought made a couple of big plays, including on a 3rd and 2, he had a tackle for loss where in the second quarter, which I thought really, springboarded Michigan able to put the route on, because they got a big stop there after Western Michigan had scored, and then gained some yards on the next drive before stalling out. So that was kind of a turning point. Mozzie Smith is a guy that we talked about in preseason camp as well, who started at the nose guard spot. I thought he acquitted himself pretty well at the line of scrimmage. He didn't make a ton of plays, but he was able to kind of get that push and take up a couple gaps, was really all you're looking for out of that spot at the very least. So, I think those are kind of the names to to watch as you go forward. How are those guys going to progress? They're not finished products yet. And Jim Harbaugh said after the game, they're not in love with the game they played. There's still a lot of things they can build on, but I thought they did quite a few things. Quite a few things were a step in the right direction.